Just like many daytime talk shows, many late-night talk shows that debuted in the 90s were quickly canceled after only one season, or two. In this video, we're going to examine 10 late-night talk shows from the decade that were also here one minute and gone the next. Into the Night with Rick Dees, hosted by Los Angeles disc jockey Rick Dees, debuted in 1990. He was part owner of the show as well. Billy Vera and the Beaters were the house band, and actress, television, and radio hostess and correspondent Lisa Canning was the announcer. Actor Greg Binkley also appeared regularly in comedy bits, and actor and writer Bob Perlow was the self-appointed correspondent of chaos. Another regular feature was a group of 4 female senior citizens known as the Committee, who chatted with Rick on various topics in taped interviews. In a 1990 interview with the LA Times, Rick said, "This has been a dream in the making for about 5 years at least. I came up with a concept for a show and have been pitching it to several people for the past few years, even to the point of putting my own pilot together 2 years ago. ABC tested the pilot with audiences, and luckily for all of us, it did real well. Then it went through the channels at ABC. Plagued with low ratings since it premiered in July, the network started to tinker with the show. The house band were replaced by an unknown outfit called Vernon Herman and the Master Mix, and then, in July 1991, Rick and Lisa left the show. They were replaced with a format featuring a new guest host every week, and in October, the show was renamed Studio 59, with the focus now on sketch comedy."
Thank you and welcome to Studio 59. I am your host, Chris Lemon, and oh boy, we got a great show for you tonight.
Even though Rick left the host position, he continued to work behind the scenes as executive producer. Only 46 of the 225 ABC affiliates carried the new show, which was finally canned on November 14, 1991. The Dennis Miller Show, created by and starring comedian and former Saturday Night Live Weekend Update anchor Dennis Miller, had everything working in its favor, including a popular and funny host, an impressive lineup of talented writers, and a target audience ready for something new. Despite all these attributes, the show was canceled just 7 months after it debuted. The show aimed to be an alternative to the traditional late-night fare. It wasn't aimed at the generations of TV watchers who tuned in to Johnny Carson for decades, but rather the new, younger audience who wanted something different than their parents' choice. Syndicated broadcaster Tribune Entertainment had seen the positive response to Arsenio Hall, who brought some much-needed diversity to weeknights when he premiered in 1989. It also became apparent that Jay Leno would be Johnny Carson's Tonight Show heir, not the edgier David Letterman. Tribune believed that they had a host in Dennis who was sarcastic, fun, and cool, and that was everything they felt was needed to swoop into the late-night landscape. The show's bandleader would be Andy Summers of The Police, another nod to younger viewers at home. The program also deviated from traditional talk shows by mixing celebrity guests with newsmakers, authors, and politicians. When The Dennis Miller Show premiered on January 20th, 1992, it boasted an impressive lineup of early guests. But things started drying up, and Dennis believed he knew why. The transition to Jay Leno had become official over at NBC. He brought longtime manager Helen Kushnick to serve as executive producer and booking agent. She was extremely loyal to Jay and fiercely competitive with anyone who challenged his success. Even before Jay's hosting debut on May 22nd, 1992, she had made it clear to prospective guests everywhere, "Do another late-night show, and you'll never be invited on The Tonight Show." This ultimatum set up what would later be referred to as the booking wars. Arsenio had the momentum to fight such a battle, but Dennis and his upstart team didn't. That July, Tribune Entertainment announced it had canceled the series due to poor ratings. The Whoopi Goldberg Show, hosted by actor, comedian, author, and television personality Whoopi Goldberg, aired in syndication from September 1992 through September 1993. The year prior, several major syndication companies were bidding for her late-night services, which her high-power handlers at Creative Artists Agency were shopping around town. She told the LA Times, "I told them I don't want a band. I don't want a posse. I don't want a studio audience. I don't want a desk. I just want a comfortable place to sit and converse, because that's how the show is, a conversation." Genesis Entertainment struck a deal with Whoopi for 180 episodes, airing 5 nights a week with a special 1-hour highlight edition on the weekend. While the late-night talk program proved Whoopi to be a serious and thoughtful observer of the political scene, it was canceled after a single season. The Jon Stewart Show, hosted by comedian, writer, producer, director, political commentator, actor, and television host Jon Stewart, premiered on MTV in 1993. The 30-minute daily show followed a fairly traditional talk format. It featured a monologue, interaction with an announcer/sidekick, actor and comedian Howard Feller, skits, interviews with celebrities, and musical performances. The primary difference was Jon himself. The then 30-year-old had a freewheeling style and readily connected with the teen and college audiences that MTV courted. The show quickly became the network's second highest rated series, behind another 1993 debut, Beavis and Butthead. That success led to Paramount Domestic Television, a corporate partner of MTV at the time, converting the show to a full hour and using it to replace the recently canceled The Arsenio Hall Show in syndication for the 1994-1995 season. Unfortunately, what worked for the ratings needs of a network like MTV did not equate to success in the mainstream broadcast market. John used an appearance on The Late Show with David Letterman on June 7, 1995, to announce that his own show had been canceled. 2 weeks later, David returned the favor by appearing on the final episode of The Jon Stewart Show, which aired on June 23, 1995. He praised John's work and pointed out that being canceled was not the same thing as failing. After Chevy Chase's big break on Saturday Night Live, the actor and comedian went on to have a string of movie hits in the 1980s, including Caddyshack, Fletch, and the National Lampoon's Vacation films. But then he fell into a slump in the early 90s with box office duds like Nothing But Trouble and Memoirs of an Invisible Man. But television executives weren't concerned with dwindling box office returns. Fox wrote him a check for $3 million, and the Chevy Chase Show was earmarked for a fall 1993 debut. The debut episode of The Chevy Chase Show on September 7, 1993 really couldn't be much worse, as it's a misfire on just about every cylinder. For starters, the show really could not have debuted at a worse time, as it premiered the week between the first episode of Late Show with David Letterman and the first episode of Late Night with Conan O'Brien, both of which were destined to leave Chevy Chase in the dust. Fox executive Lucy Salhani would later describe Chevy as, quote, very nervous, end quote, and claimed it was, quote, uncomfortable and embarrassing to watch, end quote. He did appear to grow more comfortable as the weeks went on, but by that point, the narrative around the show was already negative. Entertainment Weekly reported that the fish in the show's aquarium were dying off, and that staff members were trying to recruit audience members from retirement communities and halfway houses. Affiliates phoned Fox expressing concern. Behind the scenes, every lever was pulled, including hiring a new crop of writers and talent bookers in an effort to salvage the show. But the bleeding couldn't be stopped. As it turned out, the show's critical reputation led to problems getting guests. Finally, after 29 nights on the air, Fox broke the news to Chevy following a Friday taping. The series was done. Fox quickly began running repeats of In Living Color in the vacated time slot. Last Call aired in syndication from 1994 to 1995. It has absolutely no relation to Carson Daly's show from 2002 to 2019. Each weeknight, a panel of 5 regulars, former MTV employee Tad Lowe, critic Elvis Mitchell, magazine editor Terry McDonnell, actress and writer Brianne Leary, and London Sunday Times correspondent Sue Ellicott discussed the news and pop culture of the day. Howard Stern show regular Stuttering John Melendez joined the show as a host in 1995. It's no surprise that the show didn't last long. Right from the start, the reviews were terrible. As the LA Times bluntly said, "There's a fine line separating smartass and dumbass. Last Call crosses it." Vibe, spun off from the magazine of the same name, premiered in the summer of 1997. The show was originally hosted by director, actor, comedian, writer, and producer Chris Spencer. After just 11 weeks on the air, though, Chris got kicked to the curb. And less than 2 weeks after producers had given him a public vote of confidence. Stand-up comedian and actor Sinbad then took over as temporary host. Chris's ouster, which was effective immediately, didn't come as a total surprise. Since being handpicked to host the syndicated hour-long show by executive producer Quincy Jones, he'd been plagued by negative reviews and comments from insiders indicating that the producers were not happy with him. During the show's August 4th premiere, Chris got off to a rocky start. He noticeably perspired and displayed nervousness with guests. Although he regained some control and composure in the following days and weeks, observers said his interviewing techniques and comedy style were still lacking. But in responding to rumors earlier in October that Chris would be replaced, Russ Krasnoff, Executive Vice President of Programming for Columbia TriStar Television, which produces Vibe, said that everyone believed he was doing a fine job and he was not going to be replaced. Vibe would only last until the summer of 1998, when it was canceled. The Keenen Ivory Wayans Show, hosted by actor, comedian, director, and filmmaker Keenen Ivory Wayans, premiered ironically on the exact same day as Vibe, August 4th, 1997. Not surprisingly, the show was often compared with and competed against Vibe. There was an opening monologue, comedy sketches, and an in-house all-female band called Ladies of the Night. In 38 of the nation's top markets where ratings were available, Kenan averaged a 9% share of the available audience, while Vibe averaged 7%. Kenan, whose guests included Jada Pinkett, Brendan Fraser, and Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, also won in Los Angeles with a 13% audience share, as opposed to 9% for Vibe, which, in addition to President Bill Clinton's satellite kickoff appearance, had guests including Brandy and Anthony Edwards, with brief surprise visits by Whoopi Goldberg on Salt and Pepper. Executives for Columbia TriStar Television, which produces Vibe, said its audience grew during the hour, while Kenan's viewership declined. The Kenan Ivory show officially came to an end in March 1998. The Magic Hour, hosted by retired NBA legend Earvin Magic Johnson, premiered in syndication in June 1998 and lasted 8 long, embarrassing weeks. The show got off to an inauspicious start when radio star Howard Stern began ripping the Magic Hour on a daily basis. In a stunt intended to boost ratings, Howard was then invited to appear on the show. After he and his band, The Losers, performed the 60s surf song Wipeout, Howard followed that up with a tense interview on Magic's couch where he continued to criticize him. From its premiere, the Magic Hour was rocked by problems, ranging from Magic's obvious nervousness and unease in front of the camera to his lack of chemistry with his original sidekick, comedian Craig Shoemaker. Retooling of the show commenced. Craig's appearances were cut back, and Magic promised about 2 weeks later that he would be more relaxed and spontaneous. Craig was subsequently fired when he publicly criticized producers for reducing his airtime. He was eventually replaced by comedian Steve White, who in turn was replaced by comedian Tommy Davidson. Due to low ratings, the Magic Hour was mercifully canceled in early September 1998. The Martin Short Show, hosted by comedian, actor, and writer Martin Short, aired for 1 season from 1999 to 2000. This talk show shouldn't be confused with his TV series of the same name that ran for one 13-episode season in 1994. While it's technically categorized as a daytime talk show, it was devised with a nighttime sensibility, even though it was to be shown in the morning or afternoon in many parts of the country. So, depending on what time of day it aired, it could be considered both a daytime and nighttime talk show. Aside from interviews, it also featured sketch comedy, character portrayals by Martin, a Saturday Night Live alumnus, and generally won favorable reviews. In the end, Bernie Brillstein, one of the executive producers, told the New York Times that its late-night appeal may very well have been its undoing, believing that the show needed more time to catch on and more night slots.